congressional hearings next week. The friendly fire death of football star turned Army Ranger Corporal Pat Tillman. Then came the military records obtained by the Associated Press through the Freedom of Information Act that military officials initially blocked investigators from probing whether Tillman's death was not friendly fire at all, but perhaps murder. The request for a murder investigation came from Army medical examiners suspicious about the tight grouping of the 3 bullet holes in Pat Tillman's forehead. All were within a 2-inch diameter, suggesting the M16 that killed him was fired from perhaps just 30 feet away. CID, the Army's Criminal Investigation Division, refused to look into it. Only later did a criminal probe rule Tillman's death friendly fire. No evidence was found that anybody but Americans fired shots on that day, April 22, 2004, in Afghanistan. The Army knew almost immediately he had been killed by one of his own, but it did not drop its story of enemy fire until 5 weeks later, a week after Tillman's death. A top general had urged the head of Central Command to tell President Bush that Tillman might have been killed by friendly fire. And 2 days later, Mr. Bush referred to Tillman's death in a speech, but avoided any mention of how he died. The White House is refusing to turn over some of its internal records about Mr. Tillman, including Mr. Bush's draft versions of his speech. Let's turn now to Jon Soltz, veteran of the Iraq War, chairman of VoteVets.org. John, thanks for your time tonight.
Thanks for having me, sir.
First, as a combat Army veteran, what does it tell you when you hear no enemy shots fired, 3 bullet holes, extraordinarily tight grouping to the forehead?
It tells me the first investigation was a lie. It tells me the second investigation is a lie. He wasn't killed marching up a hill and earning a Silver Star against the Afghan fighters. He wasn't killed by a Humvee and a squad automatic weapon from 150 meters away waving his hands. That he was either killed through homicide or negligent homicide. And obviously the difference there is, was it an accidental discharge of someone next to him? But this administration has their hands on a lie, and they need to come forward and tell the truth for our soldiers and for the family.
Corporal Tillman held a number of personal views that were unpopular within the context of the Bush administration, if perhaps also within the Army. He reportedly favored John Kerry in that election that year. We know he opposed the invasion of Iraq. He thought it illegal. He had plans to meet with Noam Chomsky. The Associated Press told us in its report last night that during the firefight, a fellow soldier was hugging the ground, crying out to God, and Tillman said, let me quote this directly, "Would you shut your expletive-deleted mouth? God's not going to help you. You need to do something for yourself, you sniveling," and that's all the quote was. That was apparently at the last moment of his life. Explain how all of those details intensify the need for openness here that we're not getting now.
Well, obviously, the White House has this executive privilege. For some reason, they don't want to be honest to a family or to our country of a soldier that died in war. And we know Pat Tillman was against the war in Iraq. He signed up for Afghanistan. We know he was a free thinker. But it leads you to think, was this guy killed possibly by people that didn't like his political views, or was he killed accidentally? And we had a time of the war when we had the Abu Ghraib scandal that broke in April 2004 in Iraq. We had basically the Iraqi, Tet Offensive, as we refer to it, where the Shia militias rose up and the contractors were burned at the stake, and the president was facing re-election. He decided not to go into Fallujah for 6 months, and did they use him to justify politically bad policy in Iraq? And until they tell us the truth, they're only hurting themselves, and they're hurting the family, and they're hurting the military by not telling us the truth. But this is the time for openness. If they use them for a political ploy, the President of the United States is disgraceful.
John, we know, speaking of the Tillman family, we know their own investigation, the results of that conflicts to some degree with some of the findings that were cited in this Associated Press report last night. But whatever the precise facts turn out to be, on the broader scale, what is the message sent to current troops and prospective recruits from the way this has been handled so far in the 3 years and a few months since it happened?
I think for the Army this is so important. I'll never forget where I was. I was in Germany. I opened up the Stars and Stripes, and I saw that an NFL football player, Pat Tillman, was going to leave the NFL, leave the pop glory of our country, and be one of us. It was just a tremendous honor. I'll never forget where I was when I read, I was on a computer lab in graduate school, and I read that Pat Tillman was killed. And he made people want to be a soldier. He made us feel great about ourselves. And we rely on families and people who have family members to help enlist our troops into the military. And when a recruiter walks into a home and they ask the mother and father to give their 18-year-old to fight for our country, that mother and father is going to sit there and they're going to say, hey, can I trust that you guys are going to tell me how my son or daughter dies? It decimates our recruiting abilities, and it's the fault of our president.
Jon Soltz, veteran of the Iraq War, now chairman of VoteVets.org. As always, John, great thanks for your service, and great thanks for your service here.
Thanks so much.